You are listening to WRFG Atlanta. WRFG provides a voice for those who have been traditionally denied open access to the broadcast media through the involvement of a broad base of community elements to guarantee that access. In the utilization of the facilities and its programs, the following communities will receive first priority: those who continue to be denied free and open access to the broadcast media, and those who suffer oppression or exploitation based upon class, race, sex, age, creed, disability, sexual orientation, or immigrant status.
My name is Heather Gray, and the program is Just Peace, and I'm here with co-producer Ernest Dunkley. And I'm pleased to say that this evening we're talking with Wendell Paris. And we want to talk with Wendell about his remarkable career in cooperative economic development. This month actually is National Co-op Month. And if there's anyone in the South who has had tremendous experience over time in cooperative economic development, it's Wendell Paris. Wendell, welcome.
Oh, thank you, Heather. So nice to be with you and Ernest. Both of you all are my bosom buddies, so we'll have a nice talk.
Have a good discussion here. Right, okay. Yeah. So tell us about your background. Now, you were for a while, Wendell, also the director of the Federation of Southern Cooperatives Training Center in Alabama, right?
No, I never was the director of the training center.
Okay.
I was the kind of the agricultural cooperative specialist who was assigned to EPS to try to get some agricultural enterprises off the ground there. But I was kind of the first full-time staff person to come to the center. Lewis Black, Mr. Black was the institute director. And, you know, he had him an airstrip built there. So he would fly into work every day, but he actually was the institute director. But,
so what years are we talking about here?
That would have been 1970. 1970.
Okay.
I guess I had worked with the Southern Cooperative Development Program, which was a forward-funded initiative involving 4 states: Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, and Tennessee. And it was the Southern Cooperative Development Program served as a forerunner of the Federation of Southern Cooperatives. In fact, the Federation was getting incorporated by that time, but we all gathered in Southwest Louisiana to learn cooperative training with folk who had been engaged in all types of, well, not all types, but a lot of sensitivity training exercises. Those sensitivity training exercises we felt necessary in order to prepare us for the task ahead of organizing and establishing cooperatives, and then to put them all under one umbrella that became known as the Federation of Southern Cooperatives. So I was there pretty much from the beginning. I'd worked in cooperative development as a student at Tuskegee. Our group, called the Tuskegee Institute Community Education Program, established a cooperative called the Southeast Alabama Self-Help Association, SESHA. And SESHA worked over the county, say from Lowndes County, which is in this county in the center of the state, all the way to the Georgia line. And then SWAFCA, Southwest Alabama Farmers Cooperative Association, was from Lowndes County all the way west to the Alabama line. So we had 12 counties in SESHA, Southeast Alabama, and we had 10 counties in Southwest Alabama. So from Georgia to Mississippi, across the Alabama Black Belt, we had folks engaged in developing cooperative business enterprise. By and large, they were agricultural, but not all of them were agricultural. We had cut and sew cooperatives, we had the credit unions, and we actually had 2 cooperative grocery stores.
So fascinating.
Yeah, but I kind of had a chance to work with most of those cooperatives, being headquarters there in Epps from August of 1970 onward. There was established over in Sumter County, the Panola Land Buyers Association, which was established under cooperatives. And I kind of served as the first farm manager for the Panola Land Buyers Association, which was the land that we had gotten purchased under we purchased the 1,364 acres under the Panola Land Buyers Association. And then Panola then sold the headquarters property there to the Federation of Southern Cooperatives. So the Federation's Rural Training and Research Center is actually based on the land that was purchased by and through the Panola Land Buyers Association.
Oh, fascinating. Thanks for sharing that, Wendell. Mm-hmm. So I'm just curious about your interest in this, in cooperative economic development. I'd like to go through the process of how you first, what happened when you were learning about cooperatives, but you were interested in this, is that correct? How did you learn about cooperatives?
Well, I guess I learned a little through my daddy. My father worked with the Farm Security Administration, and that was part of the Roosevelt programs to impact impoverished communities, largely in the South. And there were some cooperatives established under that. So you had the Mileston Cooperative in Mississippi. You had the Gee's Bend Cooperative in Wilcox County, Alabama. You also had the Cotton Valley Cooperative in Macon County, Alabama. And I was kind of familiar with all of those. Well, not so much with Mileston at the time, because Daddy worked all of the counties of the state of Alabama. And so you had these special land purchases where sizable land tracts were purchased through the USDA, and then they were kind of divided up and allowed the former tenant, sharecroppers and tenant farmers to purchase the land, and they all had the cooperative principles established there, where they would buy and sell cooperatively. And so I had an understanding of it from that experience. And then, with the SNCC, Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, we were looking at ways to really help to organize communities across the South. And so the cooperative model was one that was kind of suited to SNCC, because a cooperative is, all cooperatives are basically owned and controlled by the member patrons, unlike any other business arrangements that we are familiar with in this country, especially corporations, individual proprietorships, or partnerships. They basically are controlled by the folks with the most money, the folks with the most ownership. But with a cooperative, you have what's called a democratic control, which means that each person has one vote. So really the one person, one vote principle that was really, I guess, first sounded out by the civil rights community in the late 1960s. In the middle 1960s and on into the late 1960s, gave great understanding to the cooperative development principles. Here you have folks who largely were tenant farmers or sharecroppers, folks that didn't have any land ownership or any property ownership. were now coming together to own and develop, to manage, and to just begin to understand what it feels like to be property owners in the United States of America. And that in itself is a tremendous learning experience when you can organize people to understand that they now represent another level or another degree of development that is useful in eliminating areas where there is poverty, and more than poverty, basically areas where there's a whole lot of impoverishment going on. What are folks putting on you? Then that puts keep the South more in the poor economic straits that we find it in than just poverty itself. Example, with SWAFCA.
Okay, Southwest Alabama. Go ahead.
The Southwest Alabama Farmers Cooperative Association. Folks were selling cucumbers to the pickle companies in Alabama, and basically they were getting $3 per 100 pounds of a number 3 cucumber. The number 1 probably paid around about $8 for 100 pounds. Now, when we set up a SWAFCA and established our own markets, then in the first year of operation, we were paying $6, double what the traditional buyers in those areas were paying. The same thing that was on the selling end. And we could buy the same identical fertilizer, not only the same formula, the 4-12-12 fertilizer, the nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, but the same analysis, but actually the same name brand fertilizer. We could buy it and sell through the cooperatives for something like $1.50 a 50-pound bag, cheaper than folks would buy otherwise. So we're making a tremendous impact. Not only are you buying through volume purchasing at a much lower level, but you are also, so you can sell at a much lower level, but you also you doubling what you would get from the selling end. Now that was in the first year. In the second year, we were paying for those same number 3 cucumbers. We had gone from $6 up to $8 per 100. So in the third year, everybody, not only the cooperative, not only SWAFCA, but all of the traditional buyers were now up to $12 for those same cucumbers they were selling for $3 2 years earlier. So you have an immediate impact on what's going on, an immediate economic impact. And not only does it just involve the cooperative members, it involves the whole community. So imagine now folks who had been buying cucumbers at $3 a 100 pounds, now they got to pay $12 a 100 pounds. But on the other end, look at how much that did to help the poor farmers, because they were selling $3 a 100 pounds or 3 cents a pound, and now they're selling at 12 cents a pound. So it's a tremendous impact. And as a result of that tremendous impact, you can understand why the wrath of the ruling gentry, or those folks who had been in business for so long, were just diametrically opposed to cooperative development, because you're stopping them from ripping folks off. And that wasn't just true with what was going on in Alabama. I mean, that was the Federation's history mantra across the South.
And we're talking about the Federation of Southern Cooperatives.
Federation of Southern Cooperatives. Now it's the Federation of Southern Cooperative Land Assistance Fund, but we just generally call it the Federation.
Right.
But
exactly.
in all communities, up in Tennessee, we were able to, people that registered to vote, you probably remember the tent city situation there when people registered to vote right outside of Memphis. That was one of the first tent cities where people had to go and live in tents because they were evicted for registering to vote. But those farmers up there, the economic reprisal against them was that they could not buy fuel for their tractors. So they actually had to bootleg fuel for their tractors.
Wait, now, Wendell, why is this? Because of their cooperative development work?
Yeah, but because
and registering to vote.
They were registering to vote, and they were establishing that cooperative. So the fuel suppliers in about 4 counties in right outside of Memphis, I think Whitesville, Tennessee was the the headquarters of the cooperative. But the suppliers, the fuel suppliers would refuse to sell them any fuel for their tractors. So we were saying they had to bootleg gasoline in order to make their crops. They would drive into Memphis and buy, a carload of 5-gallon cans of gasoline in order to come back to supply the membership. But later on, they were able to get their own trucks. They had 2 trucks where they were transporting their fuel and other supplies to their members. So I'm saying you have this immediate impact. And folks who are engaged in keeping segments of the community at bay or keeping them from developing, they understood very well what this would mean if we were to be able to establish a cooperative movement across the South, especially the rural South, where Blacks had quite a lot of land ownage and not only agricultural operations, but also other properties and lands that they own that could be used to develop to improve the lot of the folks who were actually the farmers themselves or the families of the farmers themselves. So I'm saying the cooperative movement has some tremendous impact. And I mean, it's immediate impact. And everybody understands how important that is, except basically the people at the very bottom. That's a learning process for folks. But I'm saying when people do undergo that learning experience, then they use those tools, those educational processes, that business acumen that's developed from developing the cooperatives is parlayed into other segments of the community. And that really, that's the reason the cooperative members, the membership of the cooperatives was so instrumental in the civil rights movement, because these folks had some understanding of how business operates. And more than that, had some understanding of the power of their collective ownership and of them working together in organization. They had understood organizational development. And that's really what puts poor and impoverished people at odds with the communities around them, because the communities around them understand that they're not going to be in those conditions long, because organizational effort that's underway, and it's a continuous organizational effort. You don't stop. So those communities where we were working in the late 1960s and into the early 1970s, they are some of the most organized communities that you find across this country, and especially in the rural communities of this country. And that was brought about through the cooperative development that took place with the Federation of Southern Cooperatives.
It's remarkable history.
Yeah.
Wendell, we're going to take a quick break and we'll be back in just a moment.
The Little 5 Point Center for Arts and Community organized relief effort. The Fulton County Board of Health and the Fulton County government has joined to make it possible for you to do your part to control the spread of COVID-19. During the month of October, there is weekly testing at the Little 5 Point Center for Arts and Community. The center is located 1083 Austin Avenue on the corner of Austin and Euclid, walking distance from the Emmons Park Water Station. The next test takes place Thursday, October 15th, and Saturday, October 24th, and also Thursday, October 29th, from 10 a.m. until 4 p.m. The test is a self-administered shallow nasal test and is available to individuals with or without symptoms. There is no charge for the test. More information is available at coreresponse.org/COVID-19-Atlanta. This is another public service announcement from your station for progressive information, WRFG 89.3.
Again, my name is Heather Gray. I'm here with co-producer Ernest Dunkley on our Just Peace program on WRFG. And we're talking with Wendell Paris this evening about cooperative economic development. This is the National Co-op Month, actually. And I'm going to ask Ernest if you've got some questions you'd like to ask Wendell.
Well, first of all, I'm still digesting what Wendell has said. It's all been very powerful and meaningful to someone that has not been privy to this kind of understanding and history. And I've been quiet because I'm learning so much at this point, and I think anyone listening to this will be also. And I'm looking forward to even studying under Wendell to understand further. There's just so much that Wendell has said from the very beginning with the sensitivity classes, because we have to be sensitized because we have been desensitized to work together. We have been desensitized in trusting one another. We don't feel it anymore. That was part of holding us in the position that they brought us here in. And in order to move forward, we're going to have to let go of a lot of these old feelings that keep us from being closer together and trusting one another. And the whole concept of the cooperative, the community cannot happen without cooperation and without cooperative. And that is the failing of our community, is that we don't know how to work together. We've been divided, and these divisions remain, and we have to get over it. We have to get over our old hurts, our old anguishes. I know inside each family, there's divisions that were caused by that wrecking of our culture. And there's a great healing process that has to go on, which as it happens, or when it happens to those of us that have not been part of it as yet, it will open so many other doors and create so many new bonds. And I'm very happy to listen to what Wendell has been saying, and let me stop speaking so we can continue.
Go ahead, Wendell. Go ahead. Sorry.
Mutual understanding, Ernest and Heather, and you all know that's at the annual meeting of the Federation every year. This is the first year because of the COVID-19 virus that we weren't able to actually meet and in person. All of us, family of the Federation, meet together. As Ernest has so vividly pointed out, that's where we learn by understanding the struggles, the accomplishments, the failures, all of those things that our other communities have gone through, then as well as our own communities that have gone through, helps us to develop just a body of knowledge that is useful in all other types of economic, well, not only economic, but community development enterprises. Those, when you learn that there are resources available through USDA and how those Department of Agriculture and how those resources ought to be used based on what the law is. And when you learn how folks have to get around, figure out some way to hoodwink the government agents in order to access those resources that's available for them, then what folks are able to use in one community, a lot of times, not all of the time, but a lot of times work in other communities. And so you're able to take advantage of that. I don't know why this would come up, but I guess around 1982, they came up with this fabricated shortage of fertilizer and all types of farm equipment. And whereas in Mississippi, we were buying chemicals at something like $95 for a five-gallon can of Treflan. I remember that very well. A 5-gallon can of Treflan cost us $95 in the Mississippi Delta that we were buying to raise the cotton. But we could buy that same brand, same concentration of Treflan over in Southwest Georgia for $42 a can. So they just took all of the stuff and took it one place and said, we don't have any. This is a shortage. And so therefore we can up the prices on stuff. But we just took a truck and went to Georgia and purchased materials and supplies for all of our cooperatives all across the South. We got stuff from Georgia. We had stuff for Louisiana. We was buying for South Carolina, Alabama, Mississippi. All of our cooperatives, we were able to buy through our cooperative union materials and equipment at much, much less price than they could in those local communities, because those multinational corporations, they figured, say, well, boom, you have no alternative. So we can charge you basically whatever we want to charge for an exorbitant prices that are not anywhere near what would be a market rate. But since they are the only game in town, then they kind of set their own prices any way they want to. But that's another advantage of the cooperatives and of meeting together to understand. So, well, if you can buy stuff in volume over in your community and you can ship it to me, or I can come over and pick it up, and I can make that trip over there. It's economical for me to make the trip to go over there and pick up 60 boxes of collard plants out of Georgia, where we can buy those collard plants for something like, right now, probably $35 or $40 for 1,000 plants. But if we go down to the local suppliers here, you're looking at paying $25 for basically 50 plants. So I'm saying, wow. And that's going on every day all over this country, how folks are just exploited for no good reason. So, well, it's a good reason for them, because it is exploitation, which is the basis of wealth in this country, is exploitation through capitalism. But when you have more people to understand and to be able to, just to appreciate the fact that there are alternative means of getting things done, and there are alternative business arrangements that can help you to become much more successful, reach success in much shorter periods of time than having to deal with folks at the local level who don't want to see you in business in the first place. So those are tremendous learning experiences that not only our cooperative members know, but we are able to share with other community folk.
So, Wendell, the thing is, given all of this, you saw a tremendous change and or empowerment in communities. Is that right?
Oh, most definitely. Most definitely. Right. And Hank Sanders, both of you know Hank Sanders.
Right. Hank in Alabama, attorney in
Alabama. Attorney, Chestnut, Sanders, and Sanders. Yeah. Hank Sanders won the Senate race in 1983 in Alabama. And he resigned. He didn't run, I guess, last year before last, but his daughter is now a senator in there. So
in Alabama, right?
In Alabama
State Senator.
Malika Sanders Fortner is Hank's daughter, and she is senator in his place. But now Hank was able to stay there for about 35 years because at the same time that he was engaged with the Emergency Land Fund, then when he got ready to run for Senate in the West Alabama district, then no one else could quit Hank over there. We didn't even worry about Hank losing that election, because basically the folks who were in the cooperative development movement and all the way back to Lowndes County. I mentioned Lowndes County, where the Black Panther Party started. That's where we first met Hank. Hank was a student coming down from Talladega, and we were students coming over from Tuskegee. And I'm saying our relationship has lasted all through that period. So I'm saying, but that was the case. So Hank became our senator. Guess who became our state representative? Mr. Lewis Black's twin brother, Lucius Black.
Oh, wonderful.
Who came from the Federation. He was the president of the Alabama State Association of Cooperatives. So here we have our senator who comes from the Emergency Land Fund, which is now, the real name now, the Federation of Southern Cooperatives Land Assistance Fund. And here's our state representative coming from Federation of Southern Cooperatives. That was the same thing in Lowndes County with James Thomas, who was the state representative over there. So basically, from the Mississippi line all the way to the Georgia line, the politics at the state level was controlled by, those offices were won by people who came through the Federation of Southern Cooperative Land Assistance Fund network. The same thing is true over in Mississippi. I mean, the folks who were winning, especially over on the East Mississippi side, those folks came through the Federation of Southern Cooperatives. Those folks who were elected to those positions. Esther Harrison came right out of the creation of the Federation, called the Minority People's Council on the Ten-Ton Waterway. Fellow that representing West Point, Mississippi, Mr. Gill. He came through the Mississippi Catfish Equity Cooperative. So I'm saying it was happening throughout.
So let me just ask you this. So what is it about cooperatives that is so empowering?
because it gives you a sense of self. It gives you a sense of understanding. More than anything else, it helps you to know how powerful you can become through organization. That's what it does. That's the reason that's the reason cooperatives are frowned on so much by even by the government in the United States. The federal government did not want us to establish cooperatives across the South. When we went into Israel, and
when was that, Wendell? When was that?
That was in the early part of 1970, probably April of. Well, let's see, Mr. Black, Charles Prejean, John Zipwood, Leonard Smith from the National Sharecroppers Fund, and Slater King, from Georgia. Slater's a business person. It's C.B. King's brothers. I don't know if y'all remember C.B. C.B. is an attorney over there.
Right.
With C.B. King's brother, Slater King. All of them went to visit Israel probably in 1969. And in 1970, they said, well, send us some of your folks over here to get a look at cooperative development in the nation of Israel. Because all businesses basically, well, not all business, but over 75% of the businesses in Israel are cooperatively owned, either through the kibbutz. Well, the three forms of cooperatives in Israel are the kibbutz, the moshav, which allows the kibbutz, you don't have everybody's working community plots together. But in the moshav, you would have individual farmers, kind of like what you would have here, who would buy and sell together through their cooperative. So you have the kibbutz, you have the moshav, and you have the moshav shitufi, which was a combination of some folks working the land collectively and some folks working the land individually.
Wendell, before we go on, just for a moment, I just want our listeners to know that you are listening to WRFG Atlanta 89.3 FM. My name is Heather Gray. The program is Just Peace, and I'm here with co-producer Ernest Dunkley, and we're talking, I'm pleased to say, with Wendell Paris about cooperative economic development. Wendell is based in Mississippi, actually, but has a long experience involved in Mississippi and Alabama, and I'm sure other parts of the South as well. But anyway, let's get on to Israel again. So the experience was quite remarkable. Did you learn a lot from that experience?
Well, we were doing very well in the first 2 weeks until the United States government called them and told them don't teach us anything else.
Oh, is that right? I didn't know about that. So how did you learn? I mean, what did you learn about that?
Well,
some of who in the United States did this? Do you know?
We don't know exactly, but now.
Oh wow, I never knew
Ed
that.
Geffner, that I had worked with in SNCC. Ed Geffner is Jewish persuasion. Ed came over and told us what was happening because we were trying to understand. So why they don't teach us what we came here to learn?
So they were teaching you at first, Wendell, and then
at first, about the first 2 or 3 weeks we were there, we were learning all cooperative principles and practices that they had in place. They had a marketing system for that cooperatives all across the state of Israel, and they just had radio cars and trucks and stuff. So if they needed 50 bushels of sweet potatoes in Haifa, then which was up in the northern part of the country, they could just get on the radio and say, well, look, whoever's headed this way and has some sweet potatoes, bring us that, bring us cucumbers, bring us what, and all over the country. And suppose we could have had that in the southeastern United States. Well, we could have been say, well, if we're going to ship, if we got over an abundance of cucumbers in Alabama, then we'll send them to the cooperatives in Georgia, or we'll send them to North Florida, or we'll send them to Louisiana. Whatever we can need, we can better meet our needs if we have a thorough understanding of the produce that we have that's readily available, where it is, how long it's going to take to get to where it is, and all of that kind of stuff. But I'm saying they were teaching us that at first, but they just stopped. So then we just rode around the country for another 2.5 months, looking at all of the geography and basically the religious institutions and things there that were established, but very, very little cooperative development that we learned after that.
So the assumption is some entity in the United States, probably the U.S. government, did not want Black folks who were in
the South,
Israel at the time and from the South to be empowered, basically, right?
Well, that's right. I'm saying the United States government, we had the OEO, remember, Office of Economic Opportunity?
Yes.
And OEO had these funds that they were putting into communities, supposedly to provide economic opportunity to folks. But they weren't offering any economic opportunity. They basically were social programs. The Head Start programs comes out of OEO. There was economic opportunity. Now, where you get the OEO, how does a Head Start program provide economic opportunity? Well, it did give some folks some jobs, but it didn't empower people to take advantage of the economies of scale that's available through the cooperative movement. So you had OEO that was created, not for economic opportunity. Another program that came out of OEO was what's the free lawyers program? Y'all, I'm 75 and I'm going senile.
No, you're far from senile, Wendell. That's all right.
All of the free lawyers programs. What is that?
Okay, whatever. I don't know.
But all of that came out of OEO. So there was a special program on the OEO that allowed cooperative development to take place for about 3 years. Then the United States government said, well, boom, we're gonna do a study to show that cooperative development is not a meaningful way of development for people in the rural South.
Oh my goodness.
And they did it.
What year are we talking about here?
That would have been 1972.
So they did. So it's 1972. So they did a study.
They did. It was done by Apt Associates out of Boston. But the effort was to legitimize the reason for the federal government to no longer fund cooperatives across the South. And they wanted us to cooperate with that. And in fact, if you didn't cooperate with the Apt study, then you certainly weren't going to get any more money out of those entities that were established for the express purpose of doing that. And that's what really caused the rift in the Federation early on with our membership, because the Federation's membership voted in 1970, in August of 1970, I think, in West Point over at Mary Holmes College. They took the vote. What will we do with the Apt study? So our Federation membership said, we will not cooperate with this foolishness, because it means then that folks don't want us to really own and control our own businesses, which would mean that eventually we could own and control our destiny. So they said, we got to stop this. So they stopped that federal money from coming in there. Not only did the OEO stop it, the Ford Foundation, which had funded the Southern Cooperative Development Program, decided that it was not going to fund cooperative development in the South anymore, because cooperative development was not a way to really help people to rid themselves of poverty condition. And so the Ford Foundation stopped funding us. So that's when the big rift came, because here we were with our membership, some of them saying, Father McKnight, you heard of Father A.J. McKnight?
Right.
They splintered off and set up a thing called a Southern Cooperative Development Fund. Now, the development fund was set up by the Federation of Southern Cooperative for the express purpose of providing developmental funding for the membership of the Federation. But when Ford and OEO said, well, we're not going to fund the Federation anymore, they said, well, we're going to fund the Southern Cooperative Development Fund and not the Federation. Wow. So here it is again, the divide and conquer scheme, goes all the way back to as far as we can remember. So here they put in the divide and conquer scheme to prevent cooperative development from taking place in some normalized arrangements or normal development across the South. And the records will bear this out later on, what I'm telling you. But
Wendell, hold on a sec. We're going to take another quick break here, and we'll be back in just a moment.
And now a message from our Public Affairs Bulletin Board. Food for Life is an emergency COVID relief program to deliver groceries to the door of anyone in the Atlanta area who needs them. Volunteers are properly vetted to ensure safety. The project is a mutual aid effort organized and run entirely by regular people volunteering their time, and there is a serious need for more volunteers. Help includes everyday packing of grocery boxes and delivering them. There are also many volunteer opportunities that can be done entirely from home, including answering phone calls and coordinating volunteers to drive. Anyone can sign up to receive groceries or to volunteer at atlsurvival.org/food.
Again, we're talking with Wendell Paris from Mississippi, actually about cooperative economic development. My name is Heather Gray, and I'm here with co-producer Ernest Dunkley. Wendell, this history is just really something. The efforts to try to undermine the efforts for empowerment, basically, right? In the South.
To prevent empowerment.
To prevent empowerment altogether.
By pure
exactly.
people.
Exactly. So that it would allow the entities in the South to further exploit the Black community, it seems to me.
Oh, yeah. Right. Well, I was mentioned Swafka, Southwest Alabama, where they started to ship stuff outside, it had started to establish markets outside of the traditional marketing arrangements with those local buyers of cucumbers and squash and peas and beans and whatever. Those pickle companies, so to speak. So we started shipping to points in the Northeast. The state of Alabama, Lillian Wallace was governor at the time, George Wallace's wife. She stopped our truck. So, when she stopped, she had the state troopers to stop the truck.
I know about that. Yeah, right.
Okay. So why are you stopping the truck? We don't have to tell you why we're stopping the truck. The laws of the state of Alabama said we can hold this truck for 72 hours without any explanation as to why it stopped. Now, here you are if you've been in, Georgia's the same thing. You know the level of humidity, you know the heat that we suffer, we undergo in the southern United States. Not only the heat, but the humidity more than anything else. But they stopped that truck. They stopped those trucks, really, and just held them on the highway. So when we got in there to check the load, it basically had liquid flying. So that meant that you didn't get any money out of that. That was done by the state government to make sure that we couldn't establish our cooperatives and buy and sell among ourselves. So you had all of the levels of government, the federal government, the state government, local government surely didn't want to see cooperative development coming into place, because those are the folks that when you organize, you could take control of government at the local level, which is what did take place. When you look at those counties in Alabama, if you look over in Southwest Georgia, if you look in the Delta of Mississippi, those communities where Blacks are in control were basically communities where you had some form of cooperative development taking place. Shirley Sherrod, many of your readers will know Shirley Sherrod, who got fired, first person to get fired by the USDA in history, I think.
Yes, right, yeah.
But Shirley and her husband Charles, right, and the SNCC folk over there in Southwest Georgia, they're the ones who set up New Communities Incorporated, which was a cooperative over there in Southwest Georgia. So no one wanted to see those businesses really come to full fruition at any level of government in this country. And they just worked so untiringly to bring all of the forces of government into play to stop poor people from reaching some economic viability, some level of economic viability.
Now, Wendell, I do want to mention that even in spite of this oppressive behavior on the part of the government, the Federation actually did survive this and has survived this and has grown. And it has a remarkable history, in my opinion.
Yes, it does. But imagine, Helen, if we had the support of the people who were supposed to be helping us.
Right.
Imagine where we would be now.
Good point.
Imagine.
Exactly.
Yeah. The Federation, most folks have not heard of the Federation because it is controlled by basically poor Black people. Now, that's what Ford was saying to us. We don't want you to have, Ford Foundation was saying, we don't want you to have a board where your membership actually is in control. What we want you to do is establish a board. We will make some suggestions to you, and you get some national people so we can get some big name people in here to support this cooperative development stuff. And we were saying, no, we can't do that. Our bylaws prevent us from having anyone in control of our businesses except for us. So that's another reason Ford had to pull out and leave us there. And the bad part about it, like you said, the Federation is still in existence.
Exactly.
And all of those other folks, they were funding, All of those people have gone by the wayside. You don't hear them anymore, but you hear of the Federation because of the development that took place basically at the local level, the organizing that was taking place at the local level to have people to know, boom, yeah, they're blocking us at this end, but we're gonna break out some other way to get the resources that we need and be able to not only to exist, but to reach some level of independence that we hadn't known before in terms of organizing that was taking place in the rural South.
Well, I do want to mention, I'm interrupting you here, Wendell, for a moment, but I do want to mention that a few years ago, a Ford Foundation representative came to visit the training center, the Federation's training center in Alabama. Okay. And he wanted to learn a little bit more about what was happening with cooperative development and so forth. So folks at the Federation, including me, took him on tour, right, of some of the entities. And one was a credit union in West Alabama. So the credit union leader was explaining what the credit union does and so forth. And I remember I could still see the Ford Foundation guy standing there. There was a whole group of us as the head of the credit union was talking. And somehow one of the things that came up in the discussion was that there was a homeless fellow in this town who was a member of the credit union. And the credit union leader was saying, well, we gave him a loan because he needed some assistance on something. And the Ford Foundation said, what? You gave a homeless fellow a loan? And the credit union said, yes, he's a member of our community. And the Ford Foundation fellow was so impressed at this compassionate response on the part of the credit union that he started giving, or at that point, he did give some money to the Federation of Southern Cooperatives. I just wanted to mention that.
Well, good. Well, I think I think other cooperatives are beginning to get some assistance from Ford now, and that's good. But I'm saying again, suppose they had stuck with us back in the 70s when we were just getting started, and had been able to have some sustained support for the organization back in its fledgling year. Instead of, 2/3 of the time you spending trying to figure out how you gonna make a payroll, you already, 2 weeks behind, so a month behind. And what I'm saying, if you had that sustained development, kind of like what the United States government provided for Israel, we were staying at cooperatives in Israel that had funding for 50 years, Heather, 50 years.
Wow.
50 years funding. And at the end of the 50 years, they would say, well, we will negotiate to see whether we're gonna start making you pay back this loan now. All of this being done with our money now. The United States government money was supporting cooperative development in foreign countries when it wouldn't support cooperative development in its own country.
Yeah.
So that's Wendell, I was gonna say, tell them about the medical situation there.
Yeah, that's another good one. That's another good one. We were saying, well, boom, in Sumter County, the doctor-patient ratio was like 1 doctor to 4,000 patients.
Oh my goodness.
4,001 ratio. So we were saying, okay, let's try to get some more doctors in here. The local AMA said, we don't want any more doctors in here.
Yeah, that's the American Medical Association.
Yeah. The local branch of the American Medical Association said, we don't want any more doctors in here. So then that A95 review process, which was set up under the Nixon administration, where the monies couldn't come directly to the counties anymore, they had to set up a superstructure that would filter resources that were coming from development through that regional body, where Black people had, they were configured in such a way that you couldn't have any control. So we never were able to get funding for a medical center in Sumter County, even though you had this ridiculously high doctor-patient ratio. It just could not happen. Greene County, who was a adjoining county, but Greene had been in control of the government since 1968. And they were under the radar, and so they could get direct funding into Greene County. So you had a thing called the Greene County Health Center kind of involved into the West Alabama Health Association. And they included Sumter County, but it always prevented folks at the local level from getting the medical needs that from them self-providing for their own medical care and medical needs. So I'm glad you mentioned that, Ernest. So
and the free medical too, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, this is, and you had the sliding scale there. If you were below the poverty level, then your medical care didn't cost you anything. And when you mentioned it, Ernest, when you mentioned that, even today, our monies are used to underwrite free medical care in Israel. Israel, everybody in Israel, even Arabs that live in Israel, have free medical care that's paid for by the United States government, our money. But that big argument now, they're trying to stop Obamacare. Keep people poor, keep people medically dependent, keep people economically deprived, if you possibly can. And I'm saying that the cooperative development movement is one that needs to be studied in more detail to see just how the experiences that folks have gone through would be useful in changing improving the conditions of poverty, but more so the improvement to rid communities of conditions of impoverishment that has kept people poor and isolated and marginalized across the country.
Well, Wendell Paris, I want to thank you so much for this interview this evening. It's just been wonderful.
Well, I'm sorry I mumbled and stumbled.
Oh, no, you were just great.
Oh,
and
y'all are edited and get all that stuff out.
So what we need to do is even more interviews, actually, about the history of the South and cooperative economic development and what's been happening with the Federation of Southern Cooperatives as well in the future.
Yeah.
But it was just wonderful, Wendell. Thank you so much.
Oh, well, thank you both. Like I said, I claim y'all. Y'all are mine. Y'all are my extended family. So
thank you.
So our extended family, we have to do what we can to help each other. I'm just, I know the importance of getting the story, the truth out relative to what has taken place among, indigenous populations, especially in the rural South. And I thank you both. And thank you all. Thank your radio station. Thank everybody for allowing us to come on. And any way we can be of assistance, let us know.
Thank you, Wendell.
Thank you, Wendell.
Oh, thank you both.
We really appreciate you.
We cannot lie our way to the truth. We cannot lie our way to the truth. We spin and spin the earth around. We cannot lie our way to the truth. Lying will destroy us. Amen. Lying will destroy us. Amen. Lying will destroy us. Amen. And truth will set us free. Truth will set us free.
Stand up and speak the truth. Stand up and speak the truth. We the people have the power to change all corruption. If we would only come together. And speak the truth. Stand up. Stand up. Stand up. Stand up. Stand up. and speak the truth.
And speak the truth.
Each and every day,
Each and every day,
I put my life on the line.
I put my life on the line
To try to stop
to try to stop
this awful
this
crime.
awful crime.
But we the people
We the people
have the power,
have power
to stop all,
Stop all
corruption.
corruption.
If we would only
If we only
come together
come together
and speak the truth.
and speak the truth.
So you can hear me say,
Yeah,
stand up,
yeah.
stand up,
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 and speak the truth.
and speak the truth. Oh yeah, it's easy to do. You come together and speak the truth. It's so easy. It's so easy. It's so easy. And when you come together and speak the truth, you got to stand together and speak the truth. Let's get together. Let's get together. Let's get together. Oh yeah. better stand up
and speak the truth. Stand up,
stand up
and speak the truth.
and speak the truth.
We the people have the power to change all corruption. If we would only come together, and speak the truth.
And speak the truth.
Stand up,
Stand up,
stand and speak the truth.
And speak the truth.